Okay, good morning, everybody. At the stage. Good morning, Andy.
Good morning, Jim. Hope you had a good evening last night with the basketball and the ending of one of the hockey series, and now we've got an interesting weekend of baseball coming up. It's really nice if you take a look at the 12 interleague games. Most of them are natural rivalries, and some of them are a little bit more creative rivalries because there aren't geographical rivalries that these teams can fit.
Isn't it incredible to have so many games? I mean, National American it got
Yeah.
all in. It's really a big. It's very lopsided card, but there's a lot of good matchups to talk about for sure.
Oh, sure. I think baseball's done this a few times over the last few years where they'll group. I think they used to do a lot of it in June, where they would group like Mets, Yankees, Athletics, Giants, Dodgers, Angels, White Sox, Cubs, Indians, Reds, and they like the ones that we have now, and make them like 3 game series. And I think there may even be a second time that they do this when they switch the location and have another 3 game series, maybe in July or August.
It's great stuff. I love it. I love it. So
Yeah.
let's bring up the lines and let me see what we got here. These are today's baseball lines right here. And I'll let everybody see this. Um, there's a lot of good ones and there's some big prices, but there's also some really good matchups. Uh,
Yes.
if there's something on here, let's go through the card that you like at this point, and then we'll.
Yeah, I think I wrote down, let me see, I think 7 games that I was sort of having at least some sort of opinion on that I want to do a little bit more work on.
Let me share the screen here and get my stuff together. Okay. I do better as we go along. There we
There we
go.
go.
Okay, now we're here. Okay. All right, go ahead. Whatever you like to talk about, I'll jump in with you.
Okay, I'll go with the order that you have the games on the screen, which I guess is time order as opposed to, well, I guess they still call it the rotation that
Yeah.
they put out there with Don Best and everything that you guys used to do for years and years and years
Oh, we
with
sure
the
did.
great
Yeah,
schedule books.
that's
Um,
right.
those are nice little promos every segment of the season that we could look forward to. White Sox and the Cubs. White Sox are playing nicely lately. They took a bunch of the games in Cincinnati, and the Cubs have been one of the best teams in the league. I don't know that much about Horton, the kid who's supposed to start today for the Cubs. Don't know much on him. I know Smith for the White Sox has been pitching in and out decently, but I don't really have much on this series. I suppose going with the experience of the Cubs and the better roster at this price, you might look at laying the run and a half. And this is the one daytime game that starts at 2:20 local Chicago. I'm sorry, 1:20 local Chicago time, 11:20 Pacific time from Wrigleyville. And I'm not sure I'm going to play it because I don't know what we're getting. But if I wanted to make a play just to have some fun, I'd probably lay the run and a half with the Cubs. They've had a really good offense this year. They're still up there near the top as far as run differential goes, and that's one of the things I look at when I'm looking to back a team where I'm not quite sure of the strength of the pitching.
Well, what this left-hander Smith, they're going for the White Sox. I mean, he's done his last 6 innings,
Yeah,
16 innings, 169 ERA, 131, which isn't terrible on the whip.
yeah.
And
That's a little bit. 131 is a little bit high. I usually start getting concerned after it's like 1.25. Like 1 to 1.25 is my. It's a playable range, but it's not one that I would play unless I had much more to support it. Once you start to get 125 to 150 is sort of like a neutral zone, and then when it's 150 and over, I look to play against that pitcher, often for like let's say the first 5 innings, because that's a guy who's allowing, 150 is 1.5 base runners on base, so that means he's giving up 7 to 8 base runners if he goes 5 innings.
okay, let's jump over to the Mets and the Yankees. That's a big rivalry for many years, and we got two teams that spent a lot of money on players.
one of
Um,
whom is going back to where he lasted for a year, and that's Juan Soto. And I think his comment was something like, "I look forward to being booed" or something like that, because the Yankee fans are very upset that not only did he not resign with the Yankees, he actually went across town to their equally high spending rival, the Mets. So that's drawn a lot of intrigue. I don't know how much of a factor it's going to be in this game. I like the way Rodon has been pitching for the Yankees this year, and that is one of the plays that I am considering.
and Judge is having one hell of a
Yep,
year. What
over
a year!
400
Oh my God!
in addition to the power.
When was the last time we had a 400 hitter?
Well, that you have to go back 80. What is it? 84 years. I think Ted Williams.
Yep.
In,
Yeah.
1941, I believe. The year in which, surprisingly, when he hit 401, I believe DiMaggio, who was his rival, that's like the Manning Brady of baseball, or currently the Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes. I guess you can throw Lamar Jackson in there too, but that's basically the rivalry. DiMaggio and Williams, because their careers were pretty close, although DiMaggio's ended up shorter because of injuries, but they started around the same time. And DiMaggio actually won the MVP. I believe he won the MVP that year with the 56 game hitting streak.
Wow.
But
That's
that's a long time ago.
what year was this now? This was
1941. I think the closest we've had since then, I think George Brett challenged it for a good part of a season, I think in the 1980s, perhaps. And I think Tony Gwynn at some point also challenged it deep into the season. I think those were, as far as I can recall, the two that went very, very deep but came up a bit short.
so okay. I mean, that this is actually something that happened before both of us were born. Isn't that
Yes.
amazing?
Yeah. There's
Now,
not much we can say that about, but
no, I,
that's one of
that's
the events.
that's kind of where I was going with that.
Yeah.
Unless you go back to Gehrig and Ruth or something like that, but then we're looking at
Well,
Cleveland.
let me put it this way. My dad saw Gehrig and Ruth play as a very young boy.
Ah,
That's how long
wow,
ago that was.
wow. You got BB and the Singer going for Cleveland and Cincinnati. That's an Ohio rivalry, and
BB's
but
been pitching very well lately. He struggled
yeah,
early, but he's got
yes,
things under control now.
yes. Now that's now Singer just has not had a good run the last few times out. His last 14 innings,
Yeah,
7.
I don't know if he's pitched all that well since he went over to Cincinnati. Cincinnati's been one of the biggest disappointments this year, almost all the way around. Singer had a very good career in Kansas City. It was one of the reasons that I liked Kansas City a lot the last few years, because they had a very solid rotation and they still got a couple of good guys. In fact, they still have Reagans, who had a nice season, Waka and Lugo, and the kid this year, Bubik, who's really in contention. But that's Kansas City. We'll get to them a little bit later. But Cincinnati has been a disappointment. Well, they just lost, I think, was it 2 out of 3 to the White Sox at home. This is a game I'm certainly considering playing Cleveland. I don't mind the short price on the road. I think they're the better team overall.
What price are we looking at there?
What am I showing there? 120.
That's not bad at all,
No,
especially with
on
that pitcher matchup. And and Cleveland's bullpen is not all that
It's
shabby.
not the same. Clase has not been the closer that he was last year, at least for a good part of the early season.
True,
In fact,
true.
that line I'm showing now across, well, it's still a couple of 125s, but I'm also seeing 115s at some of the larger books.
Sale and Crochet, the Braves and Boston Red Sox. Um, this is not really that big of a rivalry between these two, but you got two real good pitchers going.
In very good form. I'm looking under in this one.
Yeah, so am I. I
In
actually,
fact, first five. Let me see what first five under is, because it's a good pitching matchup. Atlanta has never really got into their offense this year. They still miss Acuna. I don't know when he's coming back. But the total for the first 5 innings, it is shaded to the under, but it's 4, which is a key number as far as first 5 inning goes. So that's probably the way I'll look, because both, unless they're out of form, and of course Sale did pitch for a while for the Red Sox, so he's coming back there. I don't know what kind of greeting he'll get. And Crochet was the phenom with the White Sox last year, and everybody was looking to trade for him during the offseason. Boston won that, and he's delivered as expected. In fact, interestingly enough, the line, which opened about a buck, well, I say Westgate, it opened 128. It opened a little bit high, a little bit lower than that at Pinnacle, and then money has come in on Atlanta. The total, which is 8, so you're actually not even paying a bit of a premium because often you might see the first 5 a little bit less than just one half of what the total is. So that would say that you might have seen some 3.5s for the first 5, especially with the full game total vigged towards the under. So the fact that it's at 4 makes me think that the under 4 for the first 5 is an attractive. Price, and the money is coming in on Sale, who right now with Atlanta is being backed by what's been the weaker offense.
Hmm. You gotta. I mean, I look at those two pitchers in the form.
Yeah,
I know
so I
Boston.
like the under.
Yeah, so do I.
Well,
That's
no, that's why I mentioned the fact that the game is shaded. The fact that we know there are 2 good pitchers, and the fact that the money is coming in for the side on Atlanta, which has the weaker of the 2 offenses, makes me like the under even more. I would have been a little more uncomfortable if money was coming in on Boston, the team with the better offense, saying that the money's saying that Atlanta should struggle against. Atlanta might have some success against Crochet, but Atlanta's struggled against every pitcher basically this year.
next game on the card right below. It's Tampa at Miami. You got 2 Florida teams here. Bradley against Meyer. Bradley is in pretty damn good form the last few times out. Obviously, neither team is having a great year.
Yeah.
What are we looking at the price on that?
I'm not looking much at this game. I'm still showing undecided for Miami, although I believe Myers turned into rotation, but they're still showing, I think, 2 games with undecided pitchers today. This is a game that I didn't really look at. Bradley came up as a young phenom. He's never really lived up to that billing. He's been around 3 or 4 years now, but he has shown improvement gradually. Probably won't do anything with this game. Tampa Bay is the better team overall. Miami's bad, but they're not as bad as a lot of people thought. 16-26. That's still not something to get excited about. Tampa, they don't spend a lot of money, but they spend it wisely, and they're more competitive than a lot of people think the roster suggests they should be. This game actually, I'm showing Tampa about a minus 115 to 118 favorite. I could understand it, but because there are more games that I like better, I probably won't do anything with this one. If I had to make a play, I'd go with Tampa, but I don't have to, and I won't.
Well, if that's a pitching matchup, that's the direction I'd have to go. I mean, even though you have the
Yeah,
undecided issue there, but
yeah,
uh, I don't know. Now, San Diego started off a ball of fire. They've had a
yeah.
couple bumps in the road lately, and they got Kolek going against Gilbert. And boy,
Yeah,
Kolek is
I'm showing Evans now with on Don Best. I'm showing Evans, who's a rookie, thinking about his second or third. I think it's third start, maybe.
okay. So there we got some pitcher changes again.
Yeah,
Okay.
Kolek is a highly thought of prospect. I think his last game, and I'm going to try and call it up here. I think he pitched a tremendous game, like 7 shutout innings. What's today, the 16th? So
Well,
he probably,
his numbers are tremendous.
yeah. I'm going to see
Tremendous.
if he pitched on Saturday or let me see here. No, I think I think he probably pitched on last Saturday. So let me see where. Yeah. That was, I think, the 21-0 game. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, 21-0, and he's a young kid, a rookie. He pitched a complete game. They left him in there up 21-0. 9 innings, 5 hits, 2 walks, 7 strikeouts. I mean, very impressive for a kid. I think was making his second major league start.
That's got to build up his confidence to a tremendous
Yeah,
level.
he's now pitched 14 in the third innings. Has yet to give up a run,
Yeah,
an earned run. Yeah.
he's got a 0 ERA, and
Not only no earned runs, no runs at all, a .91 WHIP. Don't know if he's the only thing that's a little bit troubling, and it's not a major concern. 11 strikeouts to 4 walks. That's a relatively low ratio from what I like to see from a guy who's going to be, a power ace pitcher. But it's not bad. It's only a second start, so that'll probably improve.
well,
And
he's also going to be facing a better lineup this time.
yeah,
You
because
know,
the first one he faced was well, let's see, he faced Colorado and the Pirates, 2 of the weaker lineups and teams that have not been hitting. He pitched 5 1/3 shutout innings against Pittsburgh in his start. Going up against Seattle at home, San Diego's been very good at home. Um,
Well,
boy,
look,
that's in that questionable play range. The guy's making his third start. He's coming off an outstanding effort. Does he bounce back a little bit and struggle a little bit in this effort tonight? That's the question I would have.
and the thing about Gilbert, his overall from the beginning of the season, 380 and 108, and then he had a little bit of a rocky start in the last 15 innings
Yeah.
where those numbers went up, but he is subject to come back to form. And Mariners are not terrible.
No, and at 8.5, maybe I do look under.
Yeah, yeah. Um, we've gone through some of this stuff. What else do you see on there that you want to touch
Well,
on?
one of the games that I can't really get involved in unless you want to use it in a parlay laying the 1.5 is the game between Colorado, where I'm still showing an undecided, and I'm not sure it really matters who it would be because they're such a bad team. And in fact, I'm showing that in the run line, actually Westgate and Circa, it's -2.5 on Arizona,
Oh
minus
boy,
25. Yeah, in the places where it's -1.5, like South Point, it's -1.5, -180. Burns is going, and of course he's been highly sought after. He had what was it, the year I think in Milwaukee. He played with Baltimore. Now he's with Arizona, and he's sort of settling down at the pretty good form now as far as his recent efforts are concerned. Obviously, I can't even lay -1.5 straight, or even 2.5 is a little bit different. Although um, they have to win by 3 or more, which is not impossible going up against a Colorado team that is very, very weak and an Arizona team that can pound the ball. But I might look to maybe lay the 1.5. It doesn't make sense to lay the 390 or whatever it is. It's only going to return, I think, a 25% return at basically 4-1 to increase any parlay that you might have. So probably would pass this game unless I can find a better reason to include Arizona in there. I want no part of Colorado. Yeah, can they pull the upset? They can. I mean, after all, they have won 7 games this year. That's not saying a lot since they lost 36, but the point is it is baseball and anything can happen. But the matchups just so strongly are against Colorado, both in terms of pitching and offense.
it's funny that 7 wins and 36 losses, and we're saying, oh, well, they won 1-7.
Yeah.
Great, great. Now you talk about a matchup. Here we have this issue with Houston McCullers and had the death threats,
Yeah.
which was I hope they resolve that. I don't know if they
I
ever.
hope they found the guy.
I don't know that
Yeah, I don't know, but
I haven't heard anything
we'll
about.
probably hear something in the lead up to tonight's game because they'll bring up the incident. And
But
that was actually his second start, not his first start of the year. That was the second
Evaldi has had some pretty good success. 19 innings, 0.95 or excuse me, 0.95 ERA, 0.79 WHIP, 22 strikeouts in 19 innings. He did have the complete.
How many walks? Does it show walks up for 19 innings?
Not on this
Okay.
form. No, doesn't
Okay.
show it. But they've won 6 games in a row. Going up against you. What's the price on that game? Because if you're looking for a parlay with this one, that might
Well,
be a.
yeah. Well, I don't think it's that bad, even though it's McCullers going, because Houston's still a pretty good team. But no, it is up there in that range, -176 thereabouts. Let me see. The run line in this one is +20 at the -1.5. I like Eovaldi. I if we didn't have the incident with McCullers last week and he had just pitched a decent game, I'd be all over Texas right now. I'm just wondering, is the team going to rally behind him? Because McCullers actually, pitched a couple of years before he had that injury that sat out all last year. And, is the team going to sort of put forth a little extra effort, feeling bad for, on a human basis for what happened to him after the game, and go out there and put some runs up there, and possibly McCullers, I'm sure, is going to be very focused tonight, whether he can do anything, or and then I don't know if this was mentioned because I don't follow a lot of it very closely with the commentating, whether or not perhaps there is something related to the issue that sidelined him for so long that caused the effort last week.
That's a good question. Don't know.
So it's a game that I would that I would like to use Texas because Eovaldi has been really sensational all year. He's been around to a lot of different teams, and Texas. He's putting up Cy Young Award winning numbers. A quarter of the way through the season, and Texas is playing well as you pointed out. They had some struggles earlier on. I think they won a couple of 1-0 games early on, but right now they are playing extremely well. And Houston is not the same team that's been the dominating team in that division for the last 5-6 years. They're still a very good team, but I right now I put Seattle ahead of them, and I think that's the way the standings show.
I think if I was going to key on multiple like parlays or something like that, or first fives or whatever, I think Texas would be a key play for me.
Yeah.
There's a lot of drama going on with colors. And Houston's not, like you said, not that good a team anymore. They're okay, but
Yeah.
that's a. I like the form. It's a rivalry. It's always been a big rivalry between these two
It's
teams.
interesting, by the way, looking if these numbers are correct. Houston 22-21, Texas 24-21. But the perception is, my recollection is that Texas has been the much better team, and yet the records show they're a little bit closer. But I think a lot of it has to do with Houston has some pretty decent pitching as well, and the bullpen's held up nicely. And Texas has had some offensive struggles. But Eovaldi, Eovaldi is on that list of guys I look to back right now every time out as best I can.
I agree. That would be. I would tell if I was giving up just a free play here, I'd say Eovaldi combined with something else that you like, maybe going with Arizona on a parlay.
Yeah.
I like the under in the what do we talk about, the
Boston, Atlanta,
the Boston Atlanta game.
Sale Crochet.
I like BB over Cincinnati.
Yeah, that one I like.
These are things that you're looking at as free plays, and we'll have some plays for the service as well. Well,
the other one, by the way, that's interesting, we didn't get to talk about it yet, is the team that I believe they've won 11 in a row right now, and it's
yes,
Minnesota Twins. They're going to lose at some point. Milwaukee is playing okay, but Minnesota's been on a roll, and Ryan, who is pitching tonight, has really been pitching well.
What are you looking at the price?
What's that?
What's the price on the screen?
Screen has where is it? Minnesota, about -108, -110 in that area. Normally, and Patrick's the young kid. He's pitched decently for Milwaukee, not outstanding, but he's pitched decently. I hate to go against streaks ending just because they're so long, but Minnesota is not the kind of team that you would expect to win 11 in a row, even if you're playing weak teams to get to those 11 straight wins. But I don't know that I could play the game. Ryan has been a solid pitcher for a number of years. I might have been a little bit more comfortable playing Minnesota tonight if they were getting a small price. I have to pass this game, and I wouldn't be surprised if Milwaukee puts an end to the streak, but I can't bet on it.
Well, I'm in a different situation. I've played the Twins quite a bit in this series, in this streak. So I'm kind of stuck with continuing until they lose. And when I have obviously I guess he's their ace at this point, the way he's pitching.
Yeah.
So I have to continue to go with him, and it's a reasonable price.
Milwaukee's not a bad team. 21-23, I believe, overall, something along that neighborhood. Minnesota, well, did tell you how Minnesota had been. They've won 11 in a row. They're 24-20 right now. So they were basically 13-20 before this streak began.
Yeah, they caught themselves up. Because everybody was saying, "Hey, what the hell's wrong with this team?" Because they were expecting more from them, and all of a sudden they caught fire, and nobody expected this kind of a run. But this is pretty good stuff.
Like I said before, that I don't like to bet against the end of a streak just because I expect the streak to end. If you've been winning with them as you have, you've been winning. Well, if you've been betting them every game, you've had 11 in a row. So,
I wasn't fortunate enough to have 11 in a row, but I think I've had about 6 in a row.
Well, that's still pretty good. You've won 6 straight times with them, so they're going to lose ultimately. I would think. The question is when.
Even though I had to tear up my Dodgers 162-0 ticket.
Right.
So,
but look at it this way. whenever you lose, if Minnesota loses tonight, you're 6-1 in your last 7 bets. Minnesota could go on and win a couple more. You might be 7-8 or 1 when they finally lose. So yeah, if you're on this team, you certainly would play them. Certainly at this price.
This is a baseball show. We don't have a basketball show scheduled. We do have the WNBA starting tonight. We do have 2 big games in the NBA. We got the Boston Celtics without Tatum at the Knicks. That's a huge game, game 6. And I'm sure the Knicks do not want to go back to Boston, but they will if they have to. And then, of course, you got Denver visiting OKC, which the line is interesting because in the previous games at OKC, the lines were 10, 10 and a half, 11. And tonight, it's not tonight, tomorrow night, Sunday, actually.
Yeah.
Which gives Denver a little bit more of a rest, which they needed. They need that. And they're only getting 7. So the lines have been adjusted. We've seen what these teams are. I'm not going to try to make this into a basketball show, but Denver has led many times in the fourth quarter only to collapse from fatigue. They're not deep. They don't have a lot of players coming off the bench to help, although they did come off with a bench last night with a kid named Strother, and he was out of his mind, played so well. That saved their butt, really saved their butt. And that might give him that one extra player if he can play like that. Now he's a streaky player. Played at Gonzaga when he was in college, and he was incredible. And it saved their butt at the end of the game. But,
by the way, he was born here in Las Vegas.
Is that right?
I'm just checking his bio. 6'6", 205. So a little bit slender. Only 23 years old, and let me see what he's done all season. He's averaged 9 points per game, but he hasn't played a lot of minutes. 21 minutes, so a little bit less than a half a game. So he's been one of those contributors on a very nice Denver team that does not have the depth that you'd like to see, but they do have the experience. And if I'm looking at this game, I think Denver's going in there with a great deal of confidence. Maybe I play him in the first half. Let me see what that first half line is in the game tomorrow. And get Denver plus 4.5 in a game where the current full game line is 7.5, and fatigue should not be a factor. So the lack of depth should not hurt them earlier rather than later.
They've been playing every other day, and now they have an extra day of rest.
Yeah.
They got off Friday and Saturday. They're not playing, which is the first time they've had 2 days of rest in a long time. And Jokic has been showing a lot of wear and tear. Even last night, he wasn't shooting the 3. He was going underneath and playing underneath. He's still a great basketball player. He does a lot of other things besides score. But this is you could make an argument that Denver is actually the better team because of the way they have been leading in the fourth quarter so many times. And then you throw in the factor that they played a 7-game series against the Clippers, which was a very tough series. And now, again, they're playing another 7-game series.
So, let's also not forget the contributions of the KG veteran Westbrook.
He's always been a high-energy, highly passionate, great teammate. Yeah. He is probably one of the worst shooters that every once in a while hit a corner 3 or something, but he just is not a great shooter, but he gives you 1,000% effort.
Yeah. And he still didn't have any assists last night. Only played 16 minutes, I believe. But that veteran presence in a game 7. This is Oklahoma City. The pressure. Well, there's obviously pressure on both teams. It's a game team. It's a game 7. But Oklahoma City really has the pressure. They've been the best team all year. And I think coming into this series, they were expected to win, but they were not expected to win in 7 games. So I think that puts a little bit extra pressure on them. And, Jokic, one of the best players in the world. Westbrook, a veteran that surrounded. Murray's been, a solid contributor. The kid Strother you mentioned last night and throughout the season has made contributions. So I wouldn't be shocked if Denver wins, but the play that I'm comfortable with is playing them in the first half.
Gordon and Braun, I think that's how you say Braun or Braun.
Yeah.
have been playing exceptionally well for Denver as well. Um, I can't speak to the coach because I just don't know that he has any pedigree at this level, but because they did fire their coach a couple weeks ago. Um, it's interesting that the top three teams in the NBA all season long were the Celtics, the Cavs, and OKC. And it is possible.
All three could be
Well,
eliminated this weekend. Well,
yeah,
one of them already has been, Cleveland.
right. Which is another story and totally unbelievable how they
Yeah.
collapsed. But it's really strange, and it shows you what the regular season actually means
Yeah.
or doesn't mean. When you look at it across that board.
It's always interesting because we look at things from the perspective, let's say Cleveland collapsing, as opposed to looking at it as maybe Indiana is a lot better than people are giving him credit for. And we're talking about trashing Cleveland when let's give credit to Indiana. Remember, this team that went to the Eastern Conference Finals last year. So, we've talked about it before. Progression in the NBA, you pay your dues one season to the next. I remember Chicago had to pay their dues when Jordan was just starting to get into that run of those double repeats. But at the beginning, remember, they were fighting against the Detroit Pistons, who were the kings of the NBA. They finally got past Detroit. We've seen other teams that were going up against teams like the Lakers, while the Lakers were winning well, and even the Celtics not in the 60s when they dominated everything, but in the 80s when they started to become the team with Bird and Parrish and McHale and those guys. That teams have to pay their dues. So Indiana has really paid its dues, and if they continue to make the progression, you could make a case that it would not be a surprise for them to make it to the NBA Finals because they made it to this round last year.
Absolutely. And if you look at Indiana, if you look at the Pacers from, say, February on, or January or February on, they were as good as anybody in the league. They didn't start out back in November, December very well. But when you look at them from January on, late January on, they were as good as anyone. And so you can't take that away from them. Cavs, whatever the Cavs issues are, that's another story. But I can't take anything away from the Pacers. They have a good coach, and they got a good floor leadership. They play at pace. They wear you out because they never stop. They're kind of like OKC in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
a lot of youth and a lot of pace. So we're going to see. It's interesting. We're coming down now. If you have a final, I don't know about the TV ratings.
Indiana, OKC.
Yeah. Or how about Indiana?
Denver,
the Wolves.
Yeah, Indiana, Minnesota. Yeah.
I mean, the ratings would go through the floor.
I was speaking with someone last night, and they said right now, I think these are representative odds where if you liked Minnesota, okay, they were like 5-1 to win the championship right now. But you could play them over Indiana. In other words, if you did Minnesota to win, you could get 11-1 if you played Minnesota over Indiana, and maybe 14-1 if you played them over New York, and if you 30-1 if you played them over Boston, for example. So they were looking at ways of saying that there's an imbalance in the odds for Minnesota just to win the championship because they have to win two more series, the conference and the NBA, whereas the team that right now, well, Indiana only has to win two series as well, but Boston and or New York, Boston or New York, whoever comes out of that still has to win the final game or wrap up this series. So a little bit of manipulation there. Keep an eye sometimes. That's a good thought going forward, that you want to sometimes take a look, because very often we just see that, well, the conference odds are half of the championship odds, and that may not always be a realistic way of looking at it.
That's an interesting point. Andy, we'll get back at this on Monday. We're going to have some WNBA games to look at this weekend and review next week. And of course, we're going to have all the baseball and the NBA as well. And they brought out the NFL. We're going to have to start looking at the schedule. And the lines are out for week one.
Already found the week one line that I like.
Which one?
I believe it's the Monday night game. I think that's Minnesota at Chicago. I believe the line opened in a lot of places. Chicago 1.5. They're down to 1, and I like the Bears for a number of reasons. Yes, they have a new coach, okay, in Ben Johnson coming over from Detroit. But they also have an edge at quarterback, assuming
Yeah.
McCarthy is the starter for Minnesota, who didn't play last year. So he's basically a rookie. Williams not only had his first year, and he had some issues as well, but he also has much more talent surrounding him right now, as Johnson has put together a better offensive line for him, added some additional skilled people in the defense as well. And Minnesota, Johnson, even though he's the offensive coordinator of Detroit last year, he's been able to do scouting reports in preparing for going up against that Minnesota defense when he was with the Lions. Meanwhile, yes, it's Ben Johnson coaching now instead of offensive coordinator for the Bears, but you've got Minnesota not knowing what Johnson is going to be preparing to do offensively with the new personnel that he has. So I think that gives an edge to the Bears, in addition to what I liked what the Bears did really throughout the offseason to strengthen that team on the field and on the sidelines.
Great points, Andy. Great points. So definitely McCarthy, we have no idea what he's going
And
to do.
by the way, and I like this Minnesota team as a rule for the coming season. I just don't like the squad right now.
We absolutely know nothing about McCarthy at this
Right.
level. Let's see. This is Proline TV on YouTube. Please go there, subscribe, like, make sure you ring the bell so that you get notices. And please send in your comments and stuff. I love getting them and answering them, and we appreciate your follow.
We cover a lot of things, but we can't cover everything. So the viewers and fill us in on some of the things they'd like for us to cover that we missed.
That's right. Talk to us. Send us some notes.
Yes.
Send us comments. Even if you don't like us, just tell us you don't like us. That's okay.
Yeah.
Andy, thank you. Have a great weekend. We'll talk
You as
again
well,
on
Jim.
Monday.
Good luck, everybody.
Take care, everybody.